They want you to break, but what if your stillness is the one thing they can't destroy? You don't need to raise your voice to prove your strength. You don't need to fight fire with fire. In a world where envy hides behind politeness, where some people will dislike you simply because you had the courage to grow, to change, to live with integrity, you don't need to strike back. You only need to remain unmoved. This is not passivity. This is not weakness. This is the kind of presence that Stoic philosophy teaches, still, centered, and absolutely unshakable. When others attack, you don't flinch. When they try to provoke you, you don't respond. And when they hope to see you fall, you rise quietly, purposefully, and with grace. I've seen this in real life. Years ago, I worked with a man named Elliot. He was quiet, humble, and exceptionally competent. One day, a new colleague joined our team, Ryan, someone who constantly needed attention, validation, control. For some reason, Ryan took an immediate disliking to Elliot. Maybe it was because Elliot never tried to compete, never tried to impress. But over time, Ryan's passive-aggressive comments turned into direct slights. He'd try to undermine Elliot in meetings, make backhanded compliments, and cast doubt on his work. But Elliot never bit the bait. He didn't retaliate. He didn't gossip. He didn't even try to prove himself. He just continued doing the work, on time, high quality, no drama. Eventually, people started to notice, not just the contrast, but the character. Ryan's manipulation stood out more clearly against Elliot's silence, and over time, Ryan lost credibility. Not because Elliot fought back, but because he didn't. That's Stoic power. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That means when someone tries to drag you into their chaos, your refusal to be disturbed is the most powerful form of resistance. And here's the beauty. When you no longer respond to hate with hate, when you stop justifying yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you take back something priceless. Your peace. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. It doesn't mean you tolerate everything. It means you know how to choose your battles, and some battles are beneath you. Some situations deserve your silence more than your words. Some people deserve your absence more than your attention. And it's not just about handling people, it's about building a way of life that doesn't rely on external approval. You stop needing everyone to like you. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid making others uncomfortable. Instead, you step fully into who you are, quiet, clear, unshaken. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore 10 powerful strategies rooted in Stoic thought, not tips for pretending everything's fine, not tricks for bottling up your feelings, but real, practical, soul-deep tools for becoming someone who can't be rattled by noise, criticism, or petty attacks. You'll learn how to turn discipline into your shield, how silence can disarm a crowd, how calmness can expose others' chaos. You'll see how living with virtue doesn't just protect your peace, it wins the long game. And most importantly, you'll see how forgiving others isn't about them. It's about cutting the emotional cord that's been draining your life force. Because here's the truth. Not everyone who attacks you will do it with raised voices or angry words. Sometimes it's a subtle coldness, a withheld compliment, a quiet hope that you'll stumble. But when you learn to spot that energy and you decide not to feed it, not to dance to their rhythm, you grow into a kind of power they can't touch. So if you've ever felt targeted for being different, if you've ever felt drained by someone's hidden resentment, Or if you've ever walked away from a conversation wondering why you suddenly felt so small, this is for you. Because the strongest people are not the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who stay grounded while everything around them shakes. Let's begin. Method 1, let your journey be the response, not your words. Sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. No rebuttal, no defense, just quiet, consistent action. There's something deeply unsettling to people who try to belittle you only to watch you rise, because most criticism doesn't come from a place of truth. It comes from fear. Fear that your growth might highlight their stagnation. Fear that your discipline might expose their distractions. And when you respond, not with words, but with results, you strip away every excuse they've told themselves for why you wouldn't make it. I'll never forget someone I knew. Her name was Alina. A soft-spoken analyst in a fast-paced corporate environment. The kind of place where everyone talks a little louder than necessary, where image often trumps substance. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't trying to impress, but she had this quiet focus that made certain people uncomfortable. There was a man in her department, Jeremy, who couldn't hide his disdain. He'd joke during meetings about her extra effort, scoffed at her evening courses, even implied she was trying too hard, like ambition was something to be embarrassed about. But Alina never snapped back, never defended herself. She just kept going. While others were watching Netflix at night, she was learning Python. While they were gossiping over lunch, she was reviewing internal reports and finding ways to improve them. 6 months passed. A new project came in, complex, data-heavy, urgent. And guess who Jeremy had to ask for help? That's the power of progress. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, you don't owe anyone a debate about your worth. Just become it. Let your evolution speak for itself. Because here's the truth. People who criticize your pace, your discipline, your ambition, they're rarely looking at you. They're looking at themselves through the mirror you unintentionally hold up. And what they see makes them uncomfortable. So instead of reflecting, they project. But you don't have to carry that. Your job isn't to convince the world that you're worthy. Your job is to build the kind of life that makes it impossible to deny. That doesn't mean being perfect. It means being consistent, grounded, focused. Ask yourself this. What would happen if you stopped explaining yourself to people who are already committed to misunderstanding you? What would happen if, instead of reacting to every slight, you funneled that energy into your next step? You start to reclaim your time, your mental space, your power. And this doesn't just apply to work. Maybe it's a friend who minimizes your goals, a sibling who rolls their eyes every time you talk about your plans, a partner who subtly mocks your new habits, waking up earlier, budgeting better, cutting out distractions. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify your growth to anyone. Because in time, your transformation becomes undeniable. Maybe they won't say it out loud. Maybe they'll never apologize. But one day, the same people who laughed will look to you for guidance, not because you changed who you were to please them, but because you stayed true to your path. There's a kind of dignity in silent improvement. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't wait for applause. It just builds, quietly, patiently, powerfully. And that's what Stoicism teaches us. That our greatest revenge is not revenge at all. It's evolution. It's becoming someone so deeply aligned with their purpose, so committed to their journey, that petty opinions fall away like dust. So if someone's doubting you right now, let them. You have nothing to prove. only progress to make. And in the end, your journey will speak for itself. Method 2, let your calm unsettle them. Some people don't come to solve problems. They come to create tension. They'll stir conflict in subtle ways, challenge you in public, or use sarcasm disguised as curiosity just to knock you off balance. But here's the quiet truth. When you meet their chaos with composure, when you stay grounded while they escalate, something inside them begins to crack. The very thing they were trying to project onto you, uncertainty, insecurity, Hassan, starts to reflect back at them. Your calm becomes a mirror, and it unsettles them more than any argument ever could. I remember a story from a friend named Lucas. He works in creative direction at a mid-sized firm in Chicago. Lucas is thoughtful, disciplined, not the type to rush to judgment. A few years ago, his company hired a new department lead, Jordan. Jordan was sharp, talented, but also driven by ego. From the start, there was tension. Jordan often interrupted Lucas in meetings, questioned his decisions with a smirk, and once even said in front of a client, "That's one way to do it, I guess." But Lucas never snapped. He didn't fire back or roll his eyes. Instead, he'd respond with something simple like, "Thanks for the input," or even just nod and continue. And over time, that started to shift the dynamic. Because Jordan, like many who thrive on disruption, was looking for emotional fuel. He wanted Lucas to get defensive, to break professionalism, to react. But when Lucas didn't, Jordan began to look petty by contrast. His jabs didn't land. His tone started to seem out of place. Eventually, clients began addressing Lucas directly, even when Jordan was in the room. Not because Lucas was louder, but because his calmness created trust. That's the power of self-mastery. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control what others say or do, but we can always control how we choose to show up. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." In today's world, that mastery often shows up as emotional restraint, not bottling up emotions, but choosing not to hand over your peace every time someone else throws a spark. The person who remains calm is not weak. They are aware, they're reading the room, not reacting to it. They understand that not every comment deserves a replique. Not every insult deserves a stage. In fact, your refusal to respond often speaks louder than any comeback ever could. It signals to everyone watching that you are centered and that you will not be pulled into chaos you didn't create. Think about it. How many times have you seen a heated situation where one person stays quiet and measured while the other loses composure? Which one left a stronger impression? Which one looked more in control? In the heat of conflict, your calmness becomes a statement. I will not play this game. This doesn't mean letting others walk all over you. It means picking your moment. Sometimes the most effective response is a pause. Sometimes it's a simple sentence said with full presence. And sometimes it's just silence. One of the most overlooked truths about presence is that calmness doesn't just protect you, it reveals others. It shows who's really in control of themselves and who's not. Over time, people begin to recognize that. In a noisy world, stillness becomes magnetic. People trust those who can stay composed under pressure. They listen more closely. They gravitate toward the energy that doesn't flinch. So next time someone tries to test you, whether it's in a meeting, a comment thread, or a dinner table disagreement, ask yourself, do they want truth or just your reaction? Because when your calm becomes your signature, their chaos loses power. And that's how you shift the entire room. Itim. Without ever raising your voice. Method 3. Forgive to cut the invisible chain. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you, about your peace, about your freedom. We often think that by holding on to anger, we're staying strong, that by refusing to forgive, we're protecting ourselves. But in reality, it's the opposite. Anger is not armor, it's a chain, and it binds us far more than it ever binds the person who hurt us. I once knew a woman named Erin. She was sharp, resilient, the kind of person who always took care of others before herself. Years ago, she went through a painful betrayal. Her closest friend, someone she'd grown up with, had lied to her publicly, intentionally, and it cost Erin both a business deal and several relationships. The betrayal ran deep, and for months afterward, Erin carried it. Not visibly, she kept working, smiling, showing up. But inside, it was like dragging a bag of stones into every conversation. Every night she replayed the betrayal, what she should have said, what she could have done differently, what she wished would happen to the one who hurt her. And then one day she told me something that stuck with me. She said, "I realized my grudge had become my roommate. It lived in my house, sat at my dinner table, and whispered in my ear when I was trying to sleep." That was the day she decided to let it go. Not by pretending nothing happened, not by calling her friend to reconnect, but by acknowledging the truth of what happened, grieving it fully, and choosing not to carry the weight any longer. That's real forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. It's not forgetting. It's not giving someone a free pass. It's choosing your peace over your pain. It's saying what happened hurt deeply, but I refuse to let it define how I move forward. And the Stoics understood this long before modern psychology ever caught up. Seneca once said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." In other words, the harm that lives inside us after the fact can be worse than the original wound. Think about your own life. Is there someone who hurt you months ago, maybe even years ago, who still takes up space in your mind? Someone you no longer speak to, but who still shows up in your thoughts when you're trying to enjoy a quiet evening or take a breath before sleep? That's not protection. That's possession. And the one being possessed is you. When we forgive, we're not saying what you did was okay. We're saying you no longer have power here. We're cutting the invisible cord that keeps looping us into a past we can't change. That's why forgiveness is such a misunderstood form of strength. It's not soft, it's not passive. It's a powerful declaration of self-sovereignty. A reminder that you get to decide who lives rent-free in your heart. And if they didn't treat that space with respect, they don't get to stay. But I get it. It's not easy, especially when there was no apology, when the damage still lingers, when trust has been broken beyond repair. Forgiveness under those conditions feels impossible. But here's the truth. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need them to change. You only need to choose not to suffer on their behalf any longer. Forgiveness is a daily practice. Some mornings you'll wake up and feel free. Other days, the bitterness tries to crawl back in. But with time, you'll notice something remarkable. You'll start to breathe easier. Sleep deeper, smile without force, not because they changed, but because you did. And one day, when their name comes up in conversation and your body doesn't tighten, your heart doesn't sink, you'll know. You let go. You're free. Not for them, for you. So if someone betrayed you, if you're holding on to pain thinking it's your shield, ask yourself, what if the real strength is in putting the sword down? What if healing doesn't mean justice, it means peace? Because true power isn't found in revenge. It's found in the quiet act of choosing to be unchained. Method 4, live with such integrity that you can't be manipulated. Integrity is a form of quiet power, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't flex, but holds the line when no one else will. And in a world full of blurry morals and tempting shortcuts, that kind of clarity is rare. It's also deeply threatening to people who rely on confusion, pressure, or manipulation to get what they want. When you live with integrity, when your values are not just words but actions, something powerful happens. People stop trying to trap you in gray areas because they know you won't go there. Your no is firm, your yes is clean, and that kind of clarity, it makes you unplayable. I remember a situation a few years ago involving a man named Caleb. He was a regional sales director at a rising tech startup, smart, steady, and very principled. One day, the company began pursuing an aggressive investment deal, high reward, but also high risk. The lead investor, a man named Bryce, was known for pushing boundaries. He offered Caleb a personal incentive, an early stock bonus, if he would fast-track a contract through without asking too many questions. Now, it wasn't illegal, but it was murky. There were vague terms, hidden clauses, and plenty of "we'll fix it later" language. Bryce assured Caleb, "Everyone does this, it's just how the game works." But Caleb didn't blink. He calmly said, "If it's not something I can explain clearly to my team and sleep well with, it's not something I'll put my name on." He walked away. No drama, no lectures, just a quiet, firm refusal. A year later, that same deal became the center of a financial scandal. Several executives were pulled into a legal mess, but not Caleb. He was untouched, not because he was lucky, but because he was clear. That's what integrity does. It protects you when the storm hits, not by chance, but by design. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple words, but when lived consistently, they make you untouchable. Because people who live in half-truths and hidden agendas don't know how to deal with someone who has nothing to hide. Your transparency confuses them. Your refusal to play games leaves them with no leverage. They can't guilt you, bribe you, or pressure you because your compass doesn't move when theirs does. And let's be honest, integrity isn't always comfortable. It might cost you opportunities. You might be misunderstood. People might say you're too rigid, too idealistic, or missing the bigger picture. But here's the irony. In the long run, you're the one who sleeps peacefully. You're the one who doesn't have to keep spinning the story. You're the one whose reputation doesn't crumble the moment someone starts asking questions. And here's the part most people forget. Your integrity doesn't just protect you, it also inspires others. When you hold the line, when you choose what's right over what's easy, you remind people that it's possible. You become the anchor in rooms full of drift. But it takes vigilance, because the tests aren't always big and obvious. Sometimes it's something as small as exaggerating numbers on a report, or staying silent when someone's being thrown under the bus, or letting a comment slide because you're afraid of being the only one to speak up. That's where character is truly built, in the moments no one sees. So if you ever feel like walking away from your values just to get ahead, pause. Ask yourself, what kind of success requires me to betray myself to reach it? And is that really success at all? Integrity might not be flashy, it might not get applause in the moment, but it's the one thing no one can take from you. It's your true power. And in a world of manipulation, it makes you unshakable. Let your clarity be your boundary. Let your consistency be your strength. And when people try to pull you into the fog, just keep walking in the light. Method 5, use silence as a blade that cuts without striking. There's a kind of silence that isn't passive. It doesn't come from fear or retreat. It comes from knowing exactly who you are and choosing not to waste that clarity on noise. Some people don't want the truth. They want the drama. They come at you with sharp words, public criticism, or subtle digs, not to resolve anything, but to provoke you, to pull you into their theater where your reaction becomes their script. But when you don't respond the way they expect, when you meet provocation with stillness, not defense, you remove the stage beneath their performance. I once knew someone named Kevin. He was a high school counselor, calm and thoughtful, someone students trusted deeply. One year, a rumor spread online. A parent, angry over a disciplinary decision, implied on social media that Kevin was unfit for his job. It wasn't just unfair, it was calculated, designed to trigger a reaction, to spark a public back and forth, and yet, Kevin said nothing, not a post, not a quote, not even a clarification. Instead, he turned off his notifications, continued his work, and focused on being present for the students who still walked through his door each morning. At first, people demanded a response. Some assumed his silence was guilt. But within days, the energy began to shift. Other parents spoke up, colleagues voiced their support, and slowly the rumor dissolved, not because Kevin shouted louder, but because he didn't shout at all. That's what silence does. It unsettles the attacker. It makes them face their own motives. And in a strange way, it puts the spotlight back where it belongs, not on your reaction, but on their behavior. Stoic wisdom has always taught this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And sometimes the loudest refusal to become like them is silence itself. Let's be honest. This isn't easy. We live in a world that rewards the quick comeback, that expects you to clap back, to defend yourself, to set the record straight. But what if the strongest statement is the one you never make? What if you didn't explain yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you? What if instead you trusted time, consistency, and your own truth to speak louder than words? That kind of silence isn't weak. It's strategic. It's protective. It's a form of leadership, and it applies far beyond public attacks. Maybe you're in a conversation where someone tries to bait you, poking at old wounds, trying to get a rise out of you. Maybe it's a sibling bringing up past mistakes, a coworker subtly undercutting your ideas, a partner twisting your words in a moment of stress. In those moments, ask yourself, is this truly about resolution, or is it about control? Because when your silence is grounded, not frozen, not resentful, but rooted in awareness, it becomes a mirror. It reflects everything they're trying to project. And that reflection, it's often far more powerful than any retort you could have crafted. This doesn't mean you never speak. There are times to set boundaries, to assert truth, to correct the record. But many times the impulse to explain is more about ego than clarity, more about winning than peace. And the older I get, the more I realize that peace wins more than anything. So if someone's trying to bait you right now online, in your family, at your job, remember this: you don't have to join the argument to rise above it. You don't have to respond to be respected. You don't have to speak to be heard. Because when your silence is intentional, it becomes a force. Not everyone will understand it. Some will call it avoidance. Others will misinterpret it as weakness. Let them. You don't owe the world your reaction. You owe yourself your dignity. And sometimes the strongest strike is choosing not to swing at all. Method 6, let discipline speak for you. There's something quietly intimidating about a person who just keeps showing up. No matter what's said about them, no matter how they're treated, they don't argue, they don't explain, they just keep doing the work. And eventually the noise around them fades, not because they shouted over it, but because their consistency made it irrelevant. Discipline is not loud, it's not flashy, it's often overlooked at first, but over time it becomes impossible to ignore. It builds momentum in silence, and when practiced deliberately, it can defend your name better than any comeback ever could. I remember someone I used to work with, a woman named Melissa. She was quiet, steady, one of those people who didn't participate in office politics. Early on, a new manager joined our team. He was loud, extroverted, and quick to judge. Within weeks, he began subtly questioning Melissa's capacity. She seems too reserved, he once said in a meeting. I'm not sure she can lead when needed. Melissa heard the whispers. She saw the looks, but she said nothing. Instead, she did what she always did. She showed up early, she met every deadline, she stayed late when no one asked her to. Her reports were meticulous. Her clients trusted her. She didn't try to win favor, she simply kept delivering. 6 months passed. That same manager, he quietly recommended her for a leadership role. And when someone else asked him why, he said, she never missed. I've never had to follow up with her. She's solid. No speech, no defense, just results. That's what discipline does. It earns what noise tries to demand. It's the quiet power of keeping your word to yourself and to others over and over again until even the doubters start to lean in. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Not recognition, not applause, not even fairness, just the act of doing what must be done, because it's aligned with who you are." In today's world, that kind of consistency is rare. We live in an age of instant reaction, of people tweeting their every thought, of chasing quick wins, fast replies, and constant validation. But discipline is long game thinking. It's waking up and choosing the same path even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. It's not glamorous. And honestly, sometimes it's lonely. You'll watch others get ahead by cutting corners, playing politics, making noise, and there you are, still building, still grinding, still invisible. But here's what most people don't understand. When the dust settles, it's the ones with discipline who are still standing. Because while others are trying to be impressive, you've been becoming unshakable. Let your focus disturb those who seek attention. Let your silence confuse those who expect a fight. Let your work ethic whisper louder than their shouting ever could. You don't have to reply to every insult. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't even have to rush to prove yourself when doubted. That's what discipline is for. It will speak on your behalf. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when it does, it speaks with undeniable clarity. So if someone is doubting you right now, if they think you're too quiet, too slow, too different, don't fight to prove them wrong. Just keep showing up, keep refining, keep delivering, because one day they won't be able to deny what you've built. Not because you told them, but because your discipline showed them. And when it does, there's no argument left to win. You've already won. Quietly, consistently, completely. Method 7, let adversity train you, not break you. Some people don't try to hurt you directly. They don't argue with you, confront you, or challenge you out loud. Instead, they sit quietly in the background, waiting, waiting for life to break you, waiting for you to stumble so they don't have to lift a finger. Because to them, your collapse is confirmation. It means they were right about you. It means your strength was temporary. Your ambition was a phase. Your calm was an act. But what happens when that thing they hoped would ruin you ends up refining you? The Stoics believed that adversity wasn't an interruption. It was the path itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle is not the enemy. The obstacle is the training ground. And your enemies? They don't know what to do with someone who sees hardship as a forge, not a finish line. I once met a man named Troy. He had been climbing the ladder at a major logistics firm for over a decade. Dependable, smart, the kind of employee others leaned on. Then one winter, he was in a serious car accident. A spinal injury left him in recovery for over 8 months. During that time, he lost his role on a major project. Someone else, someone less experienced but more politically aggressive, stepped in and took the credit. When Troy returned, his momentum was gone. His promotion was off the table, and the whispers began, maybe he's not as sharp anymore. Maybe he should scale back. But Troy didn't retaliate. He didn't try to reclaim the spotlight. What he did was simple. He rebuilt. He started learning about automation systems while still in recovery. He took certification courses online, adapted his skills, and studied trends in supply chain AI. A year later, while others were trying to protect their positions, Troy launched his own consulting firm, serving the very clients his old company was beginning to lose. Not with bitterness, not out of revenge, but with clarity. He didn't waste time proving others wrong. He used adversity to prove himself right. That's the Stoic way. See, adversity doesn't automatically make you stronger. It only strengthens those who are willing to engage with it deliberately, who don't collapse into self-pity, but step into self-mastery, who use pain as a mirror, not to reflect how unfair life is, but to reveal how much strength still lives inside. If someone has ever silently waited for your life to unravel, let this be your response. Keep rising. Not because you have something to prove to them, but because adversity is the test you were built to pass. And the most satisfying victories aren't the ones you win in front of an audience. They're the ones you quietly earn when no one's clapping. And let's be honest, resilience doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean smiling through the wreckage. It means showing up anyway. It means continuing the process. And it means accepting that suffering is part of life. But surrender is optional. You don't have to look invincible. But if you keep walking, even when the road is cracked and the weight is heavy, no enemy, no critic, no setback can write your story for you. You've already taken in the pen back. So the next time something hits you hard, and it will, don't ask, why me? Ask, what now? Because people will watch. Some will root for your recovery. Others will silently hope you stay down. But neither matters more than your own decision to rise. Adversity reveals everything, who you are, who you're not, and who you're becoming. And if you choose to face it like the Stoics did, not as punishment, but as preparation, you won't just survive. You'll sharpen, you'll evolve, and eventually even your enemies will have to admit it. Nothing they waited for ever came, because you didn't break, you built. Method 8. Be indifferent to the unworthy. You don't have to respond to everyone. In fact, the people who most want your reaction are often the ones who least deserve your energy. And the most powerful move you can make in the face of cheap shots, gossip, or low-level attacks is to look the other way and keep living. There's a quiet strength in indifference, not apathy, but discernment. The ability to look at something and say, "You're not worth my peace." It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. I remember someone I met years ago, a young woman named Taylor. She had recently transitioned out of a tight-knit friend group after realizing the dynamic had turned toxic. There were constant comparisons, subtle put-downs, and gossip disguised as concern. When she stepped back without drama, no argument, no final confrontation, she knew there might be backlash. And sure enough, within weeks, things started circulating. Screenshots, twisted stories, half-truths shared in private messages. People asked her, "Aren't you going to respond?" Her answer was simple: no. She didn't post anything. She didn't clarify, didn't confront, didn't vent to mutual friends. She simply moved on. She started volunteering at a local center, took up writing again, focused on her career. The rumors lost momentum because she didn't give them fuel. Over time, something interesting happened. The people trying to tarnish her image got quieter. Their stories got weaker, and eventually they stopped. Because how long can you talk about someone who never reacts, who never gives you material? There's no satisfaction in attacking a wall that doesn't crumble. This is the hidden power of indifference. When you stop feeding what drains you, it starves. When you no longer grant space in your mind to people who haven't earned that privilege, they shrink back to where they belong: irrelevant. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Who is your master? Anyone you give the power to make you angry." Think about that. Every time we respond in defense, every time we let ourselves be triggered by someone beneath our level of peace, we hand over a piece of our emotional control. Indifference, then, is not weakness. It's a shield, a way of protecting your internal world from unnecessary storms. Because not every insult deserves an answer. Not every story deserves your side. And not every person deserves access to your response. But let's be honest, it's tempting. It's tempting to set the record straight, to explain yourself, and to prove you're not what they said. It feels righteous. It feels fair. But ask yourself, who are you really doing it for? If someone already believes the worst without asking you directly, are they even worth convincing? And if someone is speaking behind your back, do they even deserve to stand in front of you? Every time you choose indifference over reaction, you grow in stature. Your energy stays with you. Your focus remains intact. And perhaps most importantly, your self-respect deepens. You stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. That doesn't mean you stop caring about truth. It means you start caring about where and with whom your truth is shared. You preserve your presence for conversations that matter. You engage where there is mutual respect, curiosity, and space for honesty. Not where there's already judgment in the room before you speak. There's a reason the most grounded people are rarely reactive. They've realized that indifference isn't about silence. It's about sovereignty. It's knowing that your life speaks louder than their gossip, that your consistency over time will dismantle the lies, that your stillness makes their noise irrelevant. So if someone's talking behind your back today, let them. If someone's twisting your name into stories you didn't write, let them. And if someone's throwing darts at your character while hiding behind a screen, let them. You don't owe everyone a response. Sometimes the most unshakable thing you can do is simply keep walking. Method 9. Win with ethics, not schemes. In a world that often rewards cunning over character, integrity becomes a quiet act of rebellion. When you choose to play fair in a game designed to reward manipulation, you don't just stand out, you unsettle those who rely on trickery to advance. Your decency becomes disruptive. Your ethics, a silent force they can't control. There's a man I once worked with, let's call him Daniel. In a competitive corporate environment where office politics were the norm, Daniel refused to play dirty. While others formed cliques, whispered rumors, and pulled strings behind closed doors, he simply showed up, consistently, respectfully, fully. He didn't gossip, he didn't backstab, he didn't make alliances in exchange for favors, and yet his projects kept getting chosen. His ideas kept getting noticed. His name kept coming up in conversations that mattered. At first, this annoyed a few people, especially those who believed that advancement was a game of deception and alliances. They couldn't understand why someone like Daniel, who wasn't part of any camp, kept rising. They tried to provoke him, exclude him, even spread subtle doubts about his capabilities. But Daniel didn't respond with retaliation. He responded with discipline, clarity, and results. And in the end, that's what won. His character built a reputation stronger than their strategies. His transparency became his armor. And those who underestimated him had to face the truth. You can't manipulate someone who refuses to play your game. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's exactly what Stoic power looks like. Doing the right thing not because it's easy or even rewarding, but because it's who you are. In our current world, people often equate kindness with weakness. They think that by refusing to retaliate, you're backing down. But here's what they forget. Holding your moral line, especially when no one else is, requires immense inner strength. It takes far more courage to be ethical in a corrupt environment than it does to conform. And here's the twist. When you act with integrity, you expose manipulation without ever pointing fingers. Your honesty reveals their deceit. Your steady conduct highlights their chaos. Your refusal to scheme reveals how much others depend on schemes to survive. It's important to understand, ethics are not about being liked. They're about being grounded. And sometimes, standing on principle will isolate you, but it will also insulate you. When the storms of office politics hit, the ones who build their careers on gossip will fall. But the one who built on work, truth, and consistency, that's the one who lasts. So the next time someone tries to bait you into their games, smear campaigns, favoritism, subtle manipulation, step back and ask yourself, what's the long game here? What legacy do I want to leave? Do I want to be respected or just feared? Because fear fades, but integrity compounds. It builds relationships. It builds trust. And most importantly, it builds self-respect. You don't have to scream your values, live them. Let your actions show what you stand for. Let your quiet principles outlast their loud schemes. And if you ever feel like you're being outplayed, remember this. You're not here to play their game. You're here to change the game entirely. Not through force, not through drama, but through character. Because when everything else fades, the one who chose virtue wins. Method 10. Humor is a weapon of the wise. Not every battle is worth your full armor. Sometimes all it takes is a smirk, a clever comeback, and the grace to walk away. Because in moments where others try to bait you into outrage, your calm humor becomes an unexpected and disarming form of power. I remember someone named Erica, bright, kind, and often the target of backhanded compliments from a coworker who masked jealousy behind sarcasm. One day during lunch, this person snickered, "Wow, another inspirational quote on your feed? Trying to be a guru now." Most people would have snapped back, tried to defend themselves, or gone quiet, but Erica just smiled and said, "Yep, enlightenment's trending. You should try it." And then she kept eating. No drama, no argument, just a gentle jab wrapped in a smile. What happened next? That coworker never tried it again. Stoics like Epictetus often reminded us that the insult only lands if we let it. And humor, especially the grounded, self-aware kind, is a shield that turns the arrows of mockery into rubber bands. They snap, they bounce, but they don't bruise. Humor isn't about being dismissive. It's about showing that you see the game, and you're choosing not to play it by the rules. It says, "I'm aware of your energy, but I'm not giving you mine." And let's be honest, people who rely on passive aggression or snide remarks don't know what to do with someone they can't provoke. When you don't bite, when you smile instead of scowl, they lose control of the narrative. That's power. But here's the key. This isn't sarcasm rooted in bitterness. It's clarity with a wink. It's strength without stiffness. And most importantly, it's for you, not for them. Because laughter, when it comes from a centered place, is medicine. It heals you. It releases you from the heaviness of constant defensiveness. It reminds you that not every slight is a storm. Some are just breezes, and you're allowed to let them pass. Imagine Marcus Aurelius at a modern dinner table, someone criticizing his philosophy or saying stoicism is outdated. Would he yell? No, he'd probably smile, sip his wine, and say something like, "Then may you never need it." That's presence. That's mastery. In your own life, think about the last time someone tried to drag you into petty conflict. What if you'd responded with wit, not war? What if, instead of frowning, you grinned, not out of mockery, but out of awareness? What kind of peace could you preserve? This isn't about becoming a comedian. It's about holding your center with lightness. It's about refusing to take yourself or your critics too seriously. Because once you learn to laugh from within, people lose their ability to shake you from the outside. And that's the deeper truth. Humor is not weakness. It's restraint. It's strategy. It's the art of saying, "I see what you're doing, and I choose not to bleed over it." So next time someone throws shade your way, don't dim your light. Tilt your head. Smile. Maybe even respond with a line that makes them think twice. Then walk away with your peace intact. Because the most powerful people in the room are the ones who can stay light, even when the energy gets heavy. You can't stop people from disliking you for being yourself. You can't silence every whisper behind your back or correct every wrong perception about you. But what you can control, what you must control, is how you respond. That's where your true power lies, not in yelling louder, not in explaining endlessly, but in choosing silence when noise is expected, choosing peace when chaos is stirred, choosing stillness when provoked. This isn't weakness, this is mastery, because nothing confuses a manipulator more than someone who refuses to be baited. Nothing unsettles a hater more than someone who doesn't return the hatred. Think about Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history. He was surrounded by betrayal, envy, and manipulation. But his journals don't contain plans for revenge. They contain reminders to himself to remain calm, to stay just, to be disciplined in his thoughts. He knew dignity is silent, real strength is invisible. Let me tell you a short story. A woman named Clara was once publicly shamed online by an old friend. Lies, screenshots out of context, the usual drama designed to spark outrage. Everyone expected her to respond, to defend herself, to play the social media game. But she didn't. She logged off, focused on her art, kept showing up to her life with grace. Months later, the truth came out, without her saying a word. And more importantly, she had protected her peace the entire time. Clara didn't win by attacking. She won by staying rooted. Because when you're unshakable, the storms pass, but you remain. Here's another example. A man named Ethan worked in a company where a colleague constantly tried to undermine him, taking credit for ideas, spreading doubts in meetings, subtly painting him as incompetent. Ethan never confronted him directly. Instead, he made it his mission to become undeniable. He refined every detail of his work. He supported his team. He met every deadline and exceeded expectations. One day, the leadership team promoted Ethan, not because he fought for it, but because his consistency made him impossible to overlook. Ethan didn't raise his voice, he raised his value, and that's how silent power works. Your greatest revenge isn't revenge at all, it's evolution. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer carry the weight of other people's projections, that your energy belongs to you, that your worth is not up for debate, and that your peace is non-negotiable. True strength isn't about forcing others to see your light. It's about refusing to let their darkness put it out. Sometimes the wisest response isn't a counterattack. It's a quiet exit, a graceful pivot, a confident step forward without looking back. So if something in today's message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Where are you giving away your peace just by reacting? What would happen if you simply didn't? If you let go of the need to explain, to fix, to defend? Sometimes the highest form of self-respect is silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because not everyone deserves your energy. Your life doesn't need to be a debate. It needs to be a declaration of clarity, of discipline, of grace, of power so steady it no longer needs to announce itself. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Not to become cold, but to become calm. Not to shut down, but to step back. To live with purpose, without performance. And if you're building this kind of inner strength, know that you're not alone. There's a quiet movement happening, a return to dignity in a world addicted to noise. You are part of it. Subscribe to this channel for daily insights like this. Not content designed to stir you, but to center you. Not advice meant to impress you, but to empower you. Because real power doesn't shout. It simply shows up in how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and how you protect your peace. Let's keep growing silently, steadily, and powerfully.